Well, Pastor Brian, you want to help us start out here? All righty, here we're going to talk about the Methodist churches in Elliott County and some of the history of that and how the Porters were a part of that. Not just Fairview, but also a big part of Stark and even Sandy Hook. And I was just learning some of that from Brian here this summer. Brian's been looking through the Central Methodist newspaper, which has great articles back into the mid-1800s.
Yes.
So why don't you tell us about that, Brian?
Well, first thing I'll say, I'm glad to be here and glad to know this guy here. JC, he's a real good friend, and I was just looking this morning. Elliott County, the precinct, was, in 1869, Elliott County was formed out of Morgan and Carter counties. So even before, it was the Morgan Circuit is what it was called. And I'll give him all the newspaper articles. He's got whole access to everything I've found. He's going to make copies or whatever. But it was the Morgan District. In 1869, of course, Elliott County came to be. Then it was changed to the Elliott. But this was all mission field is what this was. It's hard to think in 1870 this would be the mission field, but it was. This was called the Border District of the Western Virginia Conference. And being that said, you think, well, you know, Kentucky was founded in 1792. You think, well, in 1870 that wouldn't be that way, but this was still a very rural area, very mountainous. People didn't travel. There wasn't a lot of commerce, and so the gospel was still being preached and coming into here. Now, the Methodist was not the only one doing that. There was Baptist and different offshoots of the Methodist. Pilgrim Holiness and stuff I've found, but mostly I concentrate on the Methodist. It says here on the top of your timeline and that Mrs. Elliott, it was preaching on February the 8th, 1870. Now where that's at is right next to the Stark Church, and you got a picture here you can pass around and let you look. That house, go ahead.
Well, this church, or this house, is still standing.
Yes.
Just very close to the Stark Church.
That house has been told to me by numerous people that it's been in 3 different counties and never been moved. It was originally Greenup County, and then in 1838, that part of Greenup became Carter County. Then in 1869, Carter and Morgan formed Elliott. They took part of it. So that house it's the old Elliott House. J.T. Stevens owns it now. Goes to our church. It's an amazing thing that's still, it's a wonder that nobody has grabbed a hold of it and tried to restore it, because that's a very amazing thing, built before 1838. Of course, you have to have documentation of that, but it says 1874, March 7th, Elliott Mission, 190 members, including Granville Bumgardner, Steve Porter's father-in-law. Steve Porter married Emily Bumgardner in 1872. Now, a lot of these families, the Elliott family was prominent. The Porters came in here. Of course, JC here can tell you about when they came, for sure. But these prominent families came, and they needed the gospel. They needed Jesus Christ, most importantly. And you know, they was farming people. There was some that was probably more well off as others. But they had great big mission field. This was people was sent here. And we'll go down through. There's probably more in this. This is the first time I've got to look at this today. But
surprise,
Shazam, as Gomer Pyle would say. But anyway, there's all kinds of things here. There was a zeal to see people saved, and that was what was amazing. People came from who knows where into this country.
Vanna's going to hold up some of your newspaper clippings.
Okay.
Hold them high, Vanna.
In 1890, Wimberley said they have a contract to build a new church with a Masonic lodge above or hall and on Sam Mock's land. What I found, this is not in your notes, but I told JC this. I believe we found the date of that, and well, even on down here on 1891. We believe in 1891 it was founded, and Stark Church was originally called Leedy's Chapel, and of course later on it became Stark.
Okay, thank you.
But in the mission field here in 1890, it was called Wimberley. The branch, the creek that runs through there is called Wimberley Branch. There was a family there that That was the Wimberly family that lived there. Of course, the creek was named after the family, which in turn was going to be named the community. And June the 12th, 1890, we also have another house up and under roof. R.F. Rice says in the article here in the newspaper.
Who was R.F. Rice?
R.F. Rice was a very prominent preacher, very well known. A lot of people saved under him. I've got some of that information also, I believe, in what I give you today. They took and he held great revivals, not just at Stark, but all over Elliott County, parts of Carter, around the Grayson Lake area, Bruin. Held great revivals there. Many people come, and he was well liked.
Let me interject something about
Yes.
R.F. Rice.
Okay.
R.F. Rice was Andrew Porter's pastor. He's the one that wrote his obituary and did his funeral right here in 1888. He's buried right back here. But in the obituary it said, "I've been Andrew Porter's pastor for 4 years." So do you think he was a circuit rider that came
Oh yes.
here to Fairview and to Stark and to Sandy Hook?
All over. And it was just, and I want one thing I want to make clear. This was probably a fancy shelter than what they probably had. Now some was maybe schoolhouses or something along the lines, but it was said in some of these articles it says they was under the shade of a tree. Open air preaching. John Wesley was very known for that back in England, and then Whitefield came to America and done open air preaching. Got out on a stump, the old stump preaching, and preached on the street corner. And in my opinion, I'd like to see it go back to that. I think it would be good. But
America needs it.
huh?
America needs it.
Amen. It does. Go ahead, JC.
But another thing about R.F. Rice, I got a little real short story here. You know, years ago I talked to Dan Kegley, 40 years ago, over here in Stark.
I'm Stark, yeah.
And I recorded him, and just the other day I was trying to find something in that recording, and it surprised me. He was talking about R.F. Rice. This Dan Kegley was 92 years old in 1979 when I talked to him.
Yeah.
So, however, I don't know what birth date that is. We'll figure that up. But anyway, he says there used to be a feller named of Rice that come here to Stark and hold 10-day meetings. And then he said he raised the orneriest set of boys you ever saw. He had to get away from home to preach.
Well, that's something new to me too. That's usually the way it is in preachers.
That was new to me the other day when I stumbled onto that.
But he was very well liked here. Matter of fact, in the articles up and down, you see great revivals, churches being built here. You know, things happening. And then, of course, the Methodist way is they believe you stay 2 or 3 years and they move you on somewhere else. Well, when they moved him on, it went right down the tubes. I won't say down the tubes, it went way down. They went as far, what I can gather and what I read, they didn't even send in articles to that newspaper. The preachers were supposed to send in little notes, and they sold subscriptions to this newspaper to help raise money. It's what Zephaniah Meek was the editor, and they sold subscriptions to this to help raise money for churches, for Sunday schools, for the district. That was their fundraiser.
And you're talking about the Central Methodist newspaper.
Central Methodist newspaper, yes sir. He was very well liked. He left, he went down, and he'd come back, and he would build up, and it would go down when he'd leave. It was up and down. So, but he was a circuit rider, and it was a grueling thing. The circuit rider tradition started with Francis Asbury. All over the United States and preached the gospel. Asbury College here in Kentucky is named after him. So that was where the tradition came. They took the gospel to the people. They commissioned they called it the farmer preacher, which is the guy, I consider myself that. That's my calling of God, is to be that kind of guy, to go invite you to church and preach the gospel. And just get to know people, go out and talk. The Lord blessed me with a good set of lungs and the gift of gab, so I get to go do that. But I don't have a horse, but I got a power stroke truck that I drive around today. And but I still, it's the same mentality as you go and you preach and do the Lord's work.